The Love of Simon Fox. Chapter 1. The Enchanted Wood. Once upon a time, in a faraway country, there was an enchanted forest, filled with great noble trees and ancient stones, hills and rills and caves. It was a magical place. Because it was magical, people didn't go there. People are, after all, afraid of magic. And because people didn't go there, the spells that bound the forest grew stronger and deeper still. This forest was home to a great many creatures who, drinking of its magical waters, became less ordinary. Some learned to speak the words of men, others to walk on two legs and wear clothes. They lived long lives, unnaturally long, as if the forest were reluctant to give them up to the great king of the dead. And in the advancing of their years they became as wise as the wisest of men. Old Arthur Bear even learned the art of tobacco, and would sit on the veranda of his lovely cave evenings, smoking his pipe and drinking his honey mead. They made beautiful houses in tree and under hill, where they had tea with their friends in the afternoon and discussed the weather. On a low hill near the edge of the forest, under the roots of an elm magnificently huge and twisting, old Hugh Fox had long ago made a home, with a wattle fence of willow wands and small round windows that faced down into a narrow dell where a brook tumbled among the old stones. Old Fox had long since passed away, and his house had become the house of his first son, later of his son's first son, and so on 7 times, until the time of Simon Fox, who was considered peculiar by the other fox clans and had no mate. It was not that he wanted no mate, rather he could not find the one he loved. He lived in Elmwood Foxhole alone. Now also in the time of Simon Fox there lived on the barren downs beyond the forest a small human girl named Penelope, a pretty girl with golden hair and freckles on her pale face, and because Penelope's mother had died when she was newly born, and because she was raised by her father far from other people, she had grown up perhaps a little wild, though she did not know that. It seemed so to her that all children would prefer the wild places of the world to the confines of the village. Sometimes, unbeknownst to her father, she even strolled the eaves of the enchanted forest and was not afraid. That was where Simon Fox first espied her. Chapter 2. How Simon Fox Found Penelope. The creatures of the forest seldom left the forest. It was believed, especially among the wise, that if they strayed too far from their enchanted wood, the magic that lived in them and gave them life might leave, and they would become again mere beasts. But Simon, with his restless mind, would linger quite near the eaves and copses of berry bushes that sprung up where the wood and the meadow met. He would gaze long hours over the grassy downs and wonder what lay beyond them.
"It's a world of men out there, Schork!"
Alexander Raven warned. He and Simon sat on old Arthur Bear's veranda with their friends, sipping tea, eating cakes.
"It is no place, Schork, for such as we."
Alexander Raven was young among his kind, but his kind were wiser than many. The human words had come to their clans first and foremost.
"But how do we even know men exist?"
Young Freddie Stoat inquired.
"Have any of you ever seen one?"
He looked expectantly from face to face. Arthur, Simon, his cousin Catherine Stoat, Chester the Marmot, Alexander Raven, all shook their heads gravely.
"Perhaps they are, after all, like the evil spirits the elders tell us about to keep us away from the monument rocks."
He referred to a place in the very center of the forest, on the summit of a curiously bold hill that wore a circular grove of tall pale sandstone columns like a crown. It was a sacred place, said among the elders to be the entrance to the great halls of the King of the Dead, where on the holy days of the year, the solstices of summer and winter, All Hallows' Eve, Imbolc, the doors of the underworld would open and release into the world but briefly the spirits of demons and the dead. The young among the creatures would go there, of course, despite the admonitions of their elders, or perhaps because of them, to face their fears and dare each other to tiny acts of bravery. But for the most part it was a place of strong magic, and was avoided.
It is hard for you, perhaps,
Alexander Raven replied,
to imagine human rock. You live so near the ground and cannot see so very far, but I rock from the highest boughs of my trees have seen their roads and their great rolling houses pulled by dumb beasts. I have seen the smoke rising from their chimneys far off, and smelled the food they cook over those fires. And have we not, after all, borrowed the words of human? Human is real, Freddy Stoat. Even if we have not seen him, we have seen evidence of him. Rock!
It's unfortunate
Simon remarked.
that the dumb beasts who come to us from outside the forest cannot tell us what they have seen. The world outside must be very big, and ours seems so very small.
Arthur blew a ring of grey tobacco smoke through his pursed lips and smiled.
Simon Fox, you silly boy, you haven't even seen all of our world yet. Tell us truly, my friend, how much of the forest have you strolled? Why worry then so much about what's beyond its borders?
Simon Fox looked down at his feet, perhaps a bit embarrassed, for Arthur Bear was right. He had seen little more than the few hectares immediately round his own house, and the well-worn path to Arthur Bear's. But Alexander Raven spoke in his defence.
Were we to think that way, Arthur Bear, we should never have borrowed the man words. Rock! Perhaps it is the power of speech that makes us more curious about the things we do not know.
All this talk merely nourished Simon's intense curiosity, until he found himself spending more and more time in the copses, praying for some glimpse of the mysteries from beyond the borders, praying for some glimpse of the mythical human. And so one day, having gotten distracted from his vigil by his stomach, chasing and eating mice as they raced among the berry bushes looking for fallen fruit, he first heard and then saw the most miraculous sight. A little girl in a paisley dress with golden hair and braids, and freckles on her face. She sang a song as she walked along in the shadow of the border trees, swinging a stick to clear her path where some errant tendril of berry bush had strayed into it. Simon was startled at first. Though she was small for her own kind, she was much bigger than he, and the stick alarmed him with the stories of the elders about the spears and arrows with which men hunted suddenly foremost in his mind. Would she hurt him? But that day Penelope did not hurt him, for it seemed so that she never saw him. Nor it seemed did she see him the next day, nor the one after that. Even though she wandered that same path over and over again, Simon had chosen to watch her and not reveal himself. He waited for her patiently every day, with all the excitement and curiosity of a child. The little girl was mesmerizing. Everything she did seemed as strange and wondrous as a magical dance. How she placed her feet so carefully walking, or knelt to smell the tuberose blossoms beside her path. How her knees were dirty when she stood, and singing, her voice wavered slightly when she searched for a lyric she'd forgotten. How gently she turned a captured spider in her small fingers, so gently she was never bitten, and let the butterflies land in her hair, attracted as they were by the scent of flowers that occasionally preceded or followed her. All these things captured his imagination in ways no other had. All these things, though, he saw only from a distance. When they finally met, it was not his intention. She had not come to the wood for several days, and Simon had begun to worry. A certain sadness also began to creep into his soul, and feeling suddenly very lonely, he avoided even his friends in the forest. But every day he would go to the berry bushes and wait. And one afternoon, walking absently down the path it seemed she no longer trod, he walked right into her, sending them both tumbling into the berry copse. My name is Jonathan Schork, and through an accident of incredibly good fortune, these wonderful creatures have invited me into their forest and their lives to tell you their stories.